History often sounds like a horror story. Wars, power struggles, massive fortresses, and blades sharpened for conflict. We've grown used to believing that to become great, a civilization must first become frightening. But what if that was never the only way? Welcome back to HistoraBlend, a place where the past isn't just remembered, but quietly listened to. Before we sail any further, there's a small invitation. If you're looking for a brief escape from a noisy world, you're welcome to stay here for a while. Leave a thought or a simple greeting in the comments, so this journey feels more human and less distant. And a promise for those who stay until the final moment. This story does not end in devastation, not in tragedy that weighs heavily on the heart. Instead, you may finish this journey with a sense of warmth and a quiet smile. So now, let's step away from the modern world and sail backward 4,000 years into the past, toward a lost paradise, resting quietly in the heart of the Mediterranean. Welcome to Crete. The first thing that may surprise you when you set foot here is what is missing. Look around. In Egypt, pharaohs built massive walls. In Mesopotamia, cities were surrounded by defensive moats. But here, you can walk straight from the shoreline into the palace courtyard, without iron gates, without watchtowers. The Minoans lived with a sense of safety that feels strange, even by ancient standards. They believed the sea was their greatest protector, and that neighbors were trading partners, not enemies to fear. While other civilizations carved statues of kings standing over defeated foes, Minoan artists chose something else. They carved playful octopuses onto pottery and painted women laughing together in gardens. For the Minoans, security was not built through strength, but through trust. This was the visual reflection of their soul, a quiet belief that life is too short to be spent living in fear. Let us take our first steps into this legendary complex, Knossos. If you're used to ancient ruins dressed in dull stone and gray dust, forget that image. Knossos is an explosion of color. Imagine walking through corridors painted in bold, blood-red walls, paired with the unmistakable wooden columns of the Minoans, wider at the top, narrowing at the base, painted in deep black and crimson. This is not just a building, it is a labyrinth by design. Minoan architects rejected rigid symmetry, unlike the Greeks or the Egyptians. Instead, they built stacked rooms, corridors that suddenly turn, and stairways that seem to invite you to get lost. But getting lost here is not frightening. It feels more like wandering through a giant playground. At every turn, you're greeted by living frescoes, blue dolphins leaping through waves, monkeys harvesting saffron flowers, young figures carrying silver vessels in quiet procession. There is no empty corner in this palace. Every wall speaks. Every space feels alive. But the true wonder is not found in what you see. It's found in what you feel against your skin. Walk deeper into the heart of the palace, far from the outer windows. In the ancient world, spaces like this should have been dark, suffocating, filled with torch smoke. But in Knossos, the air feels fresh, cool, and bright. How is that possible? This is where Minoan engineering reveals its genius. They designed what we now call light wells, vertical openings carved through the palace roofs, allowing Mediterranean sunlight to gently flow downward. And more importantly, Air began to circulate. The palace could breathe. It had architectural lungs, keeping its inhabitants comfortable even under the scorching summer sun. A concept we proudly call green architecture today, yet one the Minoans mastered 4,000 years ago. And if air circulation alone isn't impressive enough, let's talk about water. Beneath the stone floors we stand on lies a complex network of terracotta pipes. Minoan engineers were masters of hydraulics. They designed tapered pipes, allowing water to flow swiftly and wash away waste deposits on its own, an ancient form of self-cleaning technology. The peak of this innovation was found in the Queen's private chamber. There, archaeologists uncovered remains believed to be the world's first flushing toilet. Imagine the contrast. While great kings elsewhere still relied on chamber pots emptied manually by servants, Minoan elites flushed waste away with flowing water into underground drainage systems. For the Minoans, true luxury was never about owning countless slaves. Luxury meant a home that was clean, bright, and healthy. If we could step into a time machine and wander through a Minoan harbor market, the first thing to catch your eye wouldn't be the goods, but the people, especially the women. In much of the ancient world, women were kept in the background, remembered only as wives or mothers. But in Minoa, they stood at the center of life. Look closely at their frescoes. Minoan women appear with striking confidence. They wear layered skirts in vivid colors, fitted bodices that shape the waist, and detailed makeup, silver around the eyes, red upon the lips. One French archaeologist, upon first seeing these images, reportedly exclaimed, "Look, she's like a woman from modern Paris." That is why this figure became known as La Parisienne. Minoan women were not confined to their homes. They served as high priestesses leading rituals. They rode chariots. They sat alongside men at banquets. In Minoa, women were not objects of history. They were its pillars. So what did they do for entertainment? Did they watch gladiators kill one another, like in Rome? Of course not. That would have been far too barbaric for Minoan taste. Instead, they practiced something far more spectacular and strangely poetic: taurokathapsia, the ritual of bull leaping. Imagine a massive bull charging at full speed. Now imagine a young athlete, male or female, running straight toward it. Not to stab it with a sword like a Spanish matador, but to grasp its horns, launch their body into the air, flip acrobatically over the bull's back, and land gracefully on the ground. This was not a battle between humans and nature. It was a dance with nature. It demanded reckless courage, but also profound respect. No animal was meant to be harmed in this arena. It reveals something essential about the Minoans. They celebrated strength and physical beauty without the need for blood to be spilled. This peaceful way of life was reflected in every aspect of Minoan culture. Take a closer look at their pottery and vases. The Assyrians carved kings hunting lions. The Egyptians painted scenes of war. But the Minoans? They painted octopuses, their tentacles playfully wrapping around the curves of a vase. They painted swaying seaweed, joyful dolphins, and starfish drifting in calm waters. They were masters of the sea, a true thalassocracy. But they did not rule the ocean through fear. They lived with it. It feels as though the Minoans were one of the few ancient civilizations that truly understood how to enjoy life. They were not obsessed with conquering the world. They were content with their beautiful island, their refined art, and celebrations beneath the Mediterranean sun. Of course, we can't talk about the Minoans without addressing the elephant in the room, or more precisely, the bull, the Minotaur. Later Greek legends tell a terrifying story. They say the king of Minos hid a monster, half man, half bull, deep inside a dark underground labyrinth. The creature was said to crave blood, demanding human sacrifices year after year. This is the story that made Knossos feel haunted for centuries, a palace turned into a prison of death. But wait a moment. Didn't we just see a civilization that loved peace, art, and beauty? So we have to ask, did this monster truly exist, or was it simply a misunderstood rumor spread by suspicious neighbors?
Now, let's look at this through the lens of historical logic. Remember how complex the architecture of the Palace of Knossos is? Hundreds of rooms, winding corridors, and layered staircases? For outsiders, especially ancient Greeks visiting for the first time, it's easy to understand why they described a place like this as a labyrinth. So then, what about the monster? Historians offer an intriguing theory. During religious ceremonies, Minoan high priests often wore bull head masks while performing rituals in dimly lit underground chambers. Imagine a Greek traveler secretly watching, seeing the shadow of a bull-headed figure on the wall, hearing strange chants echo through the darkness. No real monster was needed. Human imagination did the rest. The Minotaur was likely not a man-eating beast at all, but a priest in prayer, whose story was twisted into horror by outsiders unsettled by the greatness of Minoan civilization. Yet there was one truth behind the stories of a roar from beneath the earth, often linked to the Minotaur. But it was not the sound of a beast. Minoa stood atop an active volcanic region. The ground often trembled, and deep rumbling sounds rose from the belly of the earth. To ancient people, it may have felt like the rage of a monster trapped below. In reality, it was nature's warning, a reminder that this paradise would not last forever. Not because of a divine curse, but because the natural world follows its own design. And indeed, the true monster was never the Minotaur, but a volcano known as Thera. At last, the moment arrived. Around 1600 BCE, Mount Thera, known today as Santorini, erupted in one of the most powerful volcanic explosions the world has ever witnessed. Tsunami waves struck the coast, and the sky turned dark. The brilliant Minoan civilization collapsed. Sounds tragic, doesn't it? But wait, there is another side to this story. Because of that eruption, their cities were buried beneath thick layers of volcanic ash. The ash did not destroy them. It protected them. It became a blanket of time, preserving Minoan life in silence. Without this disaster, the palaces of Knossos might have been looted, burned, or erased by future conquerors. But because they were buried, the vivid frescoes survived. The reds, the blues, waiting quietly to be discovered again thousands of years later. So, what does Minoa teach us? We, modern humans who so often feel exhausted by the world, they stand as historical proof that humanity was never destined to live in constant war. There was a time when we chose not to build walls, but to build bridges. A time when we chose to celebrate nature's beauty instead of trying to conquer it. Minoan reminds us that the true strength of a civilization is not measured by how many enemies it defeated, but by how many smiles it left behind. They were never truly lost. They simply went to sleep so that one day we could return, see the traces of their colors, and learn to believe in the beauty of life again. So, did we keep our promise from the beginning? We hope the story of this dolphin-loving land left a little warmth and a quiet smile in your heart. If you enjoyed this short journey into the past, leave a trace in the comments. Tell us, if you could live in the age of Minoan, what would you choose to do? Would you watch the bull leaping ritual? Or simply sit by the sea, listening to the evening wind? Thank you for helping us keep the flame of history alive here at HistoraBlend. Make sure to join us so we can meet again in the next journey, one just as wondrous as this. From HistoraBlend, until we meet again in the past.